"Order in the court," the judge barked, his voice echoing through the chamber. He smirked as his eyes landed on the young black teenager standing nervously before him. "What are you even doing here? This isn't a place for games," he sneered, sparking laughter from the crowd. But the teen didn't flinch. She adjusted her glasses, held her head high, and calmly opened a worn leather briefcase. In that moment, the courtroom froze. Nobody expected what came next. Who was this teenager? And why did her next words leave the judge utterly speechless? Her name was Maya Johnson. At just 17, she carried herself with a quiet strength that made people stop and stare, though not always for the right reasons. To many, she was just another black teenager from the south side of town, a girl who should have kept her head down and stayed out of places like a courtroom. But what no one saw was the fire that drove her. Maya grew up watching her mother work 2 jobs, her father gone before she was old enough to remember him. Books became her escape, her weapon, her way of fighting back against a world that often looked at her skin before her soul. By the time she was in high school, she could recite passages from legal textbooks better than most adults. While others hung out after class, Maya spent late nights studying, dreaming of the day she could stand in a courtroom, not as a defendant, but as someone who demanded justice. But dreams don't always come easy. Teachers doubted her, classmates mocked her, and the system itself seemed built to keep her small. Still, Maya refused to shrink. So when a family friend was dragged into court on charges that didn't add up, Maya made a choice. She wouldn't just sit quietly in the gallery. She would walk into that courtroom with something no one expected, a plan that could turn the tables completely. And as she stepped forward, everyone was about to find out. The courtroom was buzzing, whispers rippling through the crowd as Maya slid into the defendant's table beside Mr. Carter, the family friend she had come to help. He was a kind man who had once fixed her bike for free, now shackled with charges that didn't make sense, accused of stealing from the very store where he'd worked faithfully for over a decade. But what caught Maya's attention wasn't the accusation. It was the way the prosecutor grinned, tossing papers onto the table like this was already a done deal, as if Mr. Carter's fate was sealed before the trial even began. The judge leaned back in his chair, eyes scanning Maya with thinly veiled disdain. "Miss Johnson, this isn't a school debate. Are you sure you know what you're doing here?" His tone dripped with sarcasm, his smirk practically daring her to fail. Laughter rose from the gallery, some from lawyers in suits, others from townsfolk who had gathered just to watch the spectacle. To them, Maya was out of place, too young, too black, too bold. But Maya didn't flinch. She opened her folder, revealing pages of notes she had spent countless nights preparing. She knew Mr. Carter was innocent. The evidence against him was paper-thin, riddled with contradictions, and she was ready to expose every single one. The prosecutor rose confidently, painting Mr. Carter as a thief who had betrayed his employer's trust. He spoke with the slickness of someone who'd been here 100 times before, and when it was Maya's turn to respond, the judge gave a mocking chuckle. "Go on then, let's hear what the attorney has to say." The room went silent. Maya's voice was steady. "Your Honor, before we continue, I'd like to question the credibility of the evidence presented." She pointed to the security footage the prosecution had waved around. "Notice the timestamp. It doesn't even match the alleged time of the theft." Gasps, murmurs. Heads turned toward the screen as Maya laid out the details, her words sharp and clear. For a moment, the laughter stopped. But the judge's face hardened. "Miss Johnson, this is highly irregular. You're not a licensed attorney. Do you expect this court to take you seriously?" Maya felt the weight of every eye in the room pressing down on her. This was the moment they wanted her to break, to crumble under the pressure. Instead, she took a breath, meeting the judge's glare head-on. "No, Your Honor," she said firmly. "I expect this court to take the truth seriously." The tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. The gallery erupted into hushed whispers. The prosecutor's smirk faltered. And in that moment, the balance of power in the room began to shift. But Maya had no idea just how far the judge and the prosecution were willing to go to silence her. The air inside the courtroom grew heavy, every word Maya spoke cutting through the silence like a blade. She had just exposed a glaring hole in the prosecution's case, but instead of acknowledging it, the judge slammed his gavel. "Enough," he barked. "This is my courtroom, not some fantasy where teenagers play dress-up. Sit down before I hold you in contempt." Gasps echoed. Some in the crowd nodded in approval, eager to see her humiliated. Others stared in disbelief, wondering if they were witnessing justice or a spectacle. Maya's hands trembled under the table, but she tightened her grip on her notes. She thought of Mr. Carter, his tired eyes, his hunched shoulders, the weight of being a black man accused in a system already stacked against him. If she backed down now, he didn't stand a chance. She rose again. "With all due respect, Your Honor, silencing the truth doesn't make it disappear." The judge's face turned crimson. "Bailiff, remove her from this courtroom." The bailiff stepped forward, towering over Maya, ready to drag her out. For the first time, fear surged through her chest, but before he could touch her, a voice broke through the tension. "Wait!" It came from the jury box. One of the jurors, a middle-aged woman clutching her notebook, stood. "She's right, that evidence doesn't line up. We deserve to hear her out." The room erupted. Some jurors nodded in agreement, others exchanged uneasy glances. The judge froze, his authority suddenly cracking in front of everyone. Maya's voice didn't shake this time. She looked straight at the judge. "This isn't about me, this is about justice. Are you going to let it be heard or bury it?" The gavel hovered in his hand. The entire courtroom leaned forward, waiting for his answer. And in that unbearable pause, it became clear nothing would ever be the same again. The judge's gavel finally came down, not in anger but in resignation. He cleared his throat, avoiding Maya's piercing gaze. For the first time that day, he allowed her to continue. Piece by piece, she dismantled the prosecution's case, exposing the false timestamps, the missing evidence, and the biased testimonies that had been paraded as fact. By the time she finished, the courtroom was silent. Even the prosecutor, once so smug, refused to meet her eyes. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. When they returned, the verdict rang out, "Not guilty." Mr. Carter broke down in tears. Maya held his hand as relief washed over him, though the weight of what had almost happened lingered in the air. He had nearly lost his freedom, not because of what he had done, but because of who he was, and everyone in that room knew it. For Maya, the victory was bittersweet. She had stood her ground, proved the truth, and forced a system that tried to silence her to listen. But she also saw how fragile justice could be, how easily it bent under prejudice, and how much harder people who looked like her had to fight just to be heard. As she walked out of the courthouse, whispers followed her, some in awe, some in disbelief, but for the first time, no one was laughing. And that's the heart of this story. A teenager shouldn't have to outsmart a system to get fairness. A man shouldn't have to rely on a miracle to keep his freedom. Yet this is the reality for so many Black Americans every single day. So I'll leave you with this. If justice is truly blind, why does it see skin color first?